Hi everybody, I'm DJ Sixsmith. Welcome to the Sit Down. The world champ is in the building. It's Judah Friedlander.
It's great to see you. I'm doing incredible. Rumor has it I might be the next president of the United States.
Is that so? That's the name of the tour?
That's the future president tour. So, I mean, could be next week, could be in 6 years, I'm not sure.
I think you'd look great in the White House.
I like this television set you have here.
You got it all tricked out.
Do you always sit this close to the television?
Yes.
That's so cool.
Exactly.
I like to sit a little bit closer.
A little bit closer?
I like to really look at people's faces.
You like to really hone in?
Yeah, I do that sometimes. I just walk right up to the TV and just like stare right at someone, just look at...
Not awkward at all.
No, no. Sometimes they put too much makeup on people.
And you can absolutely notice that if you're right here at the TV.
Yeah, that's why I do that. Yeah.
And I feel like when you were a kid, too, you can kind of crawl your way up to the TV, and it was a little bit less noticeable.
I wasn't allowed. You know, I don't even know. I haven't even heard that, because when I was a kid, they used to tell you, don't sit too close to the TV, like it was bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even know, I've never hear anyone saying that anymore.
Or maybe it's gone.
Maybe it's something we need to bring back.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe that's what's causing all the problems in society.
People aren't close
is
enough
that we
to
forgot.
TV.
No, we're too close
We're
to
too close?
TV. And people have forgot about the dangers of television. Just a thought.
Just a little something there.
Yeah.
So why don't we wind it back with you? Take me back to your time growing up, and who were some comedic influences of yours that you looked up to?
Oh boy, you know, I mean, it's certainly changed over the years and continues to change. So growing up, all right.
Who were you guys?
Well, I used to be a little kid.
Yes.
And started out as a child, and then had what they call the teenage years.
Yes.
Which is puberty.
Those magical years.
Yeah. So then there were those years, and then I guess at some point you become an adult, and here I am today. So I guess it's kind of like what most humans do, where they start out as, you know, just really small, and then they get larger.
Become really big.
Yeah, and then you sort of stay the same size. You know? Did you ever have any depression when you stopped growing?
I think I just was kind of locked in. You know what? I'm going to be 5'9", and that's the way that it is. I kind of knew my dad's 6 foot. Like, or how
You're 5'9", your dad's 6 foot?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you failed as a human?
Well, my brother's taller than me. I don't feel like I failed as a human, but yeah, I'm constantly looking.
But height-wise?
Height-wise?
Do you feel like you failed?
Yes, I failed.
Does your father feel like you failed?
I think he probably does.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you that way.
Thank you.
I would never do that.
I appreciate that. It's just something I carry.
No offense to your family. I just, it's harsh, you know, and yeah.
It's a cruel
I think
world.
this country's too obsessed with height. You know, I never felt like height was something that, you know, was necessary or like made somebody better looking. Never understood that. So
some people do like height though. What if you're super short or super tall?
You know, it's all fine. You know, I think height is, it doesn't matter. I think as a society, we're sort of taught from a young age that
height matters.
That taller is better, you know, and I think this country discriminates against people who aren't tall.
So we've learned some important things, how people should look at TVs and what height's all about.
Yeah, and then sometimes when people are very tall, they get discriminated against.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So when you look at fascism, conformity, it really happens on many levels. It's not just in politics or government.
That's true.
It's all around. So.
What about being funny? I mean, that's an important thing.
Is it? I don't know.
I would say it is.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's been an important thing in your life.
I don't know. I don't know. I never really looked at it that way.
No?
I don't think so. It's what I do, you know. I mean, comedy's what I do, you know. But yeah, as far as like early influences, you know, I'm not sure. You know what, I was, you know, my dad was at least on some level into comedy, you know, because I remember as a kid, you know, they had a record collection, and I'd go through that, and they had a Lenny Bruce one, you know, and I think it was called The Sick Humor of Lenny Bruce, and he's having a picnic on like a graveyard site. And so I remember that standing out as a kid. I was like, oh, who's this guy? This is interesting. This is different, you know. And then my dad would tell me about Lenny Bruce. And then when I was in somewhere around, I don't know, maybe 7th or 8th grade, there was an AM radio station that was local where I lived. This is in Maryland at the time. And the station was just like 2 miles down the road from where we lived. And I believe it was a 24-hour and even if it wasn't 24 hours, it was an all-comedy radio station.
Wow.
This is
That's
in the
cool.
early 80s.
Yeah, that's way ahead of its
which
time.
you don't even think of.
Yeah.
So, and they would play many different things. They would play stand-up, and then they would play old radio shows, going back, I think, even to like the 1930s.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really, it's kind of educational, you know,
I'd say so, yeah.
getting current stuff and older stuff, and not just stand-up stuff. And then radio plays, they would have old radio plays. So, yeah, it was called WJOK. So, you know, those things were, and then there were some cartoon books that they were made for adults, but I was probably reading them when I was 5. And
What kind of cartoon?
it was by this author named B. Kleeman, and they were really twisted, bizarre, wild stuff. Not for kids, but sometimes I think it's good for kids' brains for them to be exposed to humor that's made for adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was influential. And I don't know, just, you know, many different, you know, comics throughout the years, you know, so, you know, pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, I started stand-up in '89.
And this is in college or after college?
This is, well, I did go to college. I don't talk about it much because, in general, I'm not a big fan of college.
And why is that?
Well, I think it's mostly a scam for most people. I think probably about 80% of the country, it's a scam.
Well, think about how much money you're spending for those 4 years.
Yeah, and how little school there is.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're in high school or grade school, you're in school from August or September all the way through like half of June. And in college, you usually don't start till late in September.
Right.
And you finish in April or May.
And you have multiple breaks.
You get 6 months off for Christmas. Easter, I think you get a year and a half off. And then there's a winter and a spring break as well. And so it's like, and you know, it seems like college students have classes maybe 3 days a week. It's like
When they feel like going.
yeah,
right.
and it's 2 days. Yeah, and the class, you know, so it's just, I don't know, it just seems weird, you know. And,
So did that hit you right away when you went to school?
I always thought it
Always
was a
thought it.
scam of college. Yeah, no.
But you still went to school anyway.
You know, my parents were like, "No, you
have to
got to
go to
finish
junior."
this." Yeah. So no, I was 19 when I started doing stand-up. I started writing jokes when I was 16, and that's about the age when I realized you could be a comedian. Because before that, you know, you might see Steve Martin, Bob Hope, Eddie Murphy, Don Rickles,
Right.
on Rodney Dangerfield on the television. It never occurred that you could do that. And then a show would come on real late at night, and in 1985 I got a VCR, so I would program that.
That's a game changer right there.
Yeah, so I would program that, and I would tape these shows late at night. Though I wasn't allowed to stay up late, but I would tape those, and then and on that show they would interview comedians after their sets and say, "Hey, where are you playing?" And they'd mention a comedy club, and I was like, "Comedy club?" I was like,
What's that?
I didn't know there were comedy clubs. So I was like, "Oh, you can do this?" I'm like, "I want to do that." So that's when I started writing jokes, and I was very introverted. And then when I was 19, I made 19 sort of like the deadline where I was like, "All right, I
It's
got
time.
to
We
start
gotta do
doing
this.
this." So that's when I did my first open mic, and
where was that?
that was actually in Washington D.C. at a club that's not open anymore.
Okay.
And then I think my next one was in D.C. and then the next ones were New York. So the first place I ever went was D.C., but I basically started in New York because I was living in New York at the time.
I gotcha. And I think that's interesting because you're just known for your New York stuff, but take me back to those couple shows you did in D.C. What was the crowd like? How nervous were you?
Well,
What do
I
you
remember well, back then, you know, I hadn't done shows before, so I didn't take a class or anything. I didn't even know that comedy classes existed.
Right, you just wrote jokes.
And where
you
I
went out
was, I don't know if classes did exist. They probably did not exist.
Right.
And in general, I'm not big on teaching stand-up comedy. I don't really, teaching art in general, I'm not that big on. I think you can teach people a little bit about the business. You can teach some, I think, some about the history. But as far as like shaping someone as an artist, I'm not big on that because I think you're going to influence them too much. Every artist needs to find their own way. So yeah, the first time I went on stage, I think I had to sign up around 5 or 6. I didn't go on until 11, and I was supposed to prepare 5 minutes. You get 5 minutes of stage time, and the whole time I'm just going over my head what I think 5 minutes are. What I have written out, and I just go over it and over and over and over it, for hours, And then right before I'm about to go on stage, the host comes to me and he goes, "You're next. I'm cutting you to 3."
Oh, man.
I'm like, oh.
You're like, oh boy.
Cutting me to 3. And my first instinct was, why is he cutting me to 3? Why is this guy doing that to me? And then my first thought was, oh, this guy doesn't like me. He's trying to pull a fast one on me. But looking back, I think the crowd was really starting to peter out because it was 11, it was a weeknight, and a lot of comics were not doing well. And so I think he was just trying to get all the comics who signed up on before the crowd leaves.
Makes sense.
So, so when I went on, it immediately just felt relaxed. It felt like home. It felt warm. It just felt right. And I got some laughs, and I don't remember much about what I said or anything like that, but I remember it just felt nice, and it just felt right, And then I didn't do it again for 6 months because I thought that's how comedy worked. Like literally, I thought the comics you'd seen on Johnny Carson's show or Letterman's show had maybe done comedy 10 times before, and then like Carson might just roll into the back of a club one night, check things out, and be like, "Yeah, maybe I'll give this kid a shot." This guy looks good,
yeah.
Yeah, let's just give this kid a shot,
But it's not another 6 months after.
Yeah, and I literally thought the comics that weren't household names that you'd see on a late night television show literally had maybe done it 10 to 20 times before. It never occurred to me that you're supposed to be working on a nightly or weekly basis.
Yeah.
So that's why I did it again 6 months later, because I figured, I think I'll go again, and that set went great.
And this is in New York, or is this still DC?
Still DC.
Okay.
The second one I think was still DC, and then it was New York after that. So it was just interesting. And then I think after about a year or a year and a half of doing it like once a month or just very sporadically, that's when I started realizing, oh, you're supposed to go out every night and do this.
Right.
And then when I realized, I was like, great, because I love doing this.
What have I been missing?
Yeah, I know. So I'm like, why did I think you just do this once in a while? But that's, that's where like a comedy class could have come in handy if someone told you, how it works.
You need to work on your material consistently.
And how like, hey, here's a list of venues.
Right.
And, just to let you know how the business sort of is structured. That stuff is good. But, I just, you just figure it out as you go.
Absolutely.
And I think life's often that way. You just,
I agree.
You just try to figure things out as you go. So.
So thinking about the business at that time, you obviously learned that you need to do stand-up a few more times than you thought.
Yeah.
What else did you learn about the business at that point?
At that point?
Yeah.
I think that I don't even think I learned that at that point. I didn't learn anything. That's one thing that's fun about when you first start out is that there's no business involved.
Right. It's free and you're just doing it.
You're just doing comedy, And that's what you have to, at least for me, because I'm not good at the business stuff, I never have been, is if you just work on your art, no matter what it is, you're going to be happier than if you're worrying about the business side of things all the time. Now, there are some people who are great at the business, so they'll probably tell you something completely different. But I've never been good at that stuff, and I don't like the business. I hate the business stuff. But I try just focus on the art, and that's it.
So when did you realize that your art was starting to turn into something that people were enjoying?
Well, I don't know. I mean, like I said, the second set I had went really well, and and things were, I think the first few years, it was a mix of sets that were great and then sets that didn't go as well. But I think, it's a mix of doing gigs that are horribly set up gigs where it's really hard to do well on it. It might be a sound system where people can't even really hear you because it's so distorted. And you can't control that. And also when you're new, I think your consistency level isn't as strong. In addition to being not as strong as a comic as when you've been doing it for a while, I think consistency is something that often takes a while to build. Yeah, what was the question? I don't even remember.
Just the business angle of it. Clearly you don't like the business.
No, I don't.
Not a fan.
And I like it less and less. It's
do you wish you could just do comedy and like the TV and movie stuff you've done? Like, was that even ever a thought? Or
yeah, no, I haven't done much TV, movie stuff in quite a while.
Right. I mean, you've built it out enough where you can just focus on your craft, which is great.
Well, it's stand-up was always my main thing. But before I did stand-up, when I was a kid, I used to do animation, make my own animated movies and stuff. So there was always, filmmaking involved. And my stand-up special, which is on Netflix, I made that myself.
That's awesome.
That was self-produced, self-directed, filmed, edited, written, performed. So, and I had no deal in place when I made that. I just made it on my own. And it's called America is the Greatest Country in the United States. It's on Netflix. And my new tour that I'm on now is thematically similar, but it's all different material. And and I also do a lot of crowd work in my show too. So, yeah, with the business though has changed so much, and it keeps changing, but it's gotten so much more corporate.
Right.
And corporations and art is not a good mix,
No.
in my opinion. So you're always fighting. I don't pay much attention to the business. I just do my own stuff. Because the business seems to always be trying to take you away from stand-up. It wants you to act in something. It wants you to host a podcast. It's like, well, those aren't stand-up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Those are different. You got to have a YouTube channel, Twitter, or Instagram. That's not stand-up. If you're funny on Twitter, that doesn't necessarily mean you're funny in stand-up, or
doesn't
vice
mean
versa.
anything. Right.
It could be both, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. They're different mediums. So, the past several years, stand-up has always been my main thing, and then the past several years, I've pretty much just been focusing on that and taking a few acting gigs here and there as they come. I actually just got an acting agent about a month ago, and I hadn't had one in about 7 or 8 years.
Interesting. And why was that?
Because I didn't want to do that much acting.
But why did you get one now, is what I'm saying?
Well, because I do like, and I view acting as a form of filmmaking. The camera person, that's a form of filmmaking. The editor, that's a form of filmmaking.
Absolutely.
So is acting. Sometimes people think it's. I look at it as a part of filmmaking. So, there are some good projects out there. I think most of the stuff that's made, TV, movies, isn't very good quality. It's just not, But there is some interesting stuff. And I find that whenever I do art, whatever medium it is, if it's drawings, cartoons, acting, radio, TV interviews, you can always bring something, you can almost always learn something from that you can bring into another medium, like stand-up. So, and, stand-up it's just you and the audience. When you're acting in something, it's you, the cameras, and other actors. So it's and it's someone else's words usually that you're saying.
Right.
So it's completely different. But sometimes it's cool to be working on a team project with other people.
30 Rock seems like a great team project.
Yeah, oh no, that was an interesting project, and that even 30 Rock changed over the years in its dynamic. When it first started, there was a little bit more improvisation going on, and that's because it was a new show. I think they hadn't, the writers and producers hadn't fully figured out exactly what the show was, and as it went on, there was less and less improvising going on, because the show was so tightly written. If you did improvisation, you'd actually be messing things up instead of adding to it. So, so it's good to, it's just like, if burritos are your favorite food, you probably still shouldn't have it every meal.
No,
you know what I mean?
Definitely not.
So, stand-up, that's my main thing. But it's good to do other things as well.
Absolutely, sprinkle it in there.
That's all I'm saying, Just like even when it comes to writing stand-up stuff, sometimes, you don't have to sit down and write. You need to just go out and live some, and then life experiences through that gives you ideas and you come up with bits. It's not just, all right, I'm going to sit down and work now.
Right. No, you need to live.
There is some of that too. So you can't just plan anything. So so doing other art forms and other things can be very good for. But what sometimes happens in showbiz, it'll take you too much out of the way.
Right.
So if you're just doing everything except stand-up, then that's not good. And that can happen so easily.
Oh, real quick.
Especially now with social media, where, you know, there used to be fewer ways you can advertise. And now there's so many ways.
Right.
So, and it's almost like there's two different worlds. There's an offline world and an online world. And so it's just interesting.
It most certainly is.
Yeah.
So you got your shows at Caroline's this weekend. 5 shows, which is more than most people do. So what makes Caroline's a special spot, and what can people check out this weekend?
Well, you know, Caroline's is interesting. Caroline's is the first club, like I told you, that old TV show I used to watch in the 80s, where, you know, I remember when they would interview comics after their sets, and sometimes they would go into the audience and say, hey, what's your favorite comedy club to go to? And I just remember the host goes to one person in the audience and says, what's your favorite comedy to go to? And the person in the audience just goes, Caroline's. and I think the host says, it's so great, too. It's just so nice. Because Caroline's was like, so I was always impressed by, Caroline's. I gotta
check this out.
I gotta
right?
check out this club. I remember when I first came to New York, because Caroline's, and they can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, you know, especially when the club first started, they were known as being like a little nicer inside than the other ones. And it's still, you know, fancy compared to some of the other clubs, you know, and it's bigger than some of the other clubs in New York, you know, where it's, so I think they sort of, you know, so I just remember that, people liking the fact that it's a little
more upscale.
Right. I guess that's better, you know, than some of the other ones. So, you know, but initially, I believe it was in Chelsea. It was on 8th Avenue in the 20s.
Yeah.
So I went there in like the late 80s to see a show, and then it was on the Seaport for a while. And I remember I'd seen some shows there, and I can't remember if I ever. You know what? I don't think I ever performed at their previous locations.
Just this one here?
Yeah, but I've been going there for
years.
Probably over 20 years, you know. But so Caroline's was always kind of like, this is a little bit of a bigger deal.
Right, there was a mystique around it.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, so I think I think that stuff is, you know, on some level still there.
Absolutely.
And that's always kind of fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's right above Times Square, so sometimes, you know, sometimes it might be, you might get more tourists or a different type of tourists who are just walking by, and so it's just fun, you know. So and you know, so it's just it's all good. You know, every place has its own little different vibe, and also it can be different every night, and even from show to show.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's just, but you know. It's always fun going there. Staff's really nice, and you know, good food. It's cool. Yeah.
So Caroline's has a different vibe. New York seems like it has a different vibe when it comes to comedy. I mean, you've been all over the world. What makes New York different comparatively?
Well, what I like about New York and is just how international it is. You know, and you really get people just from all walks of life, and that's what I like. You know, I like I like a crowd that's really diverse and stuff, and then you get that in the city, which is cool. It's also where I live, so I don't have to travel.
Right. It's always nice you can eliminate that, right?
You know, the one train and the NR go right there. So
you're a man of the people. I like that. You're just taking the subway.
Well, you can take the subway to do shows. It's a good gig.
Yeah, you don't have to get on a flight. You don't have to worry about an Uber.
Yeah, it's all good. So yeah, it's fun. But yeah, it's a good location. It's very easy to get to, and yeah, and also, you know, like Times Square, I don't even really go to that much.
Right, you're kind of avoiding it if you're a New Yorker.
But I have great memories of Times Square.
Give me some here.
Well, I used to visit. My dad's from Brooklyn, and I grew up in different places, mostly in Maryland. But we used to come up here in the early '80s, and I remember coming up here in like '81 and. You know, coming to Times Square. And Times Square was a lot different back then. You had to really watch it. You know, it was kind of a war zone and just kind of crazy. And they used to have these. There were 3 24-hour video arcade places where you can play video games like 24 hours, called Playland, and they were kind of dangerous but that kind of made the games more exciting. So, you know, so while you're playing Centipede, you got to worry about other people stacking up quarters. That's what they would do. Like if this is the machine here, you're playing on the game.
Yep.
They stack their quarters on the ledge up here, which means they have the next game.
They're marking their territory.
Yeah, so, and then you got to worry about, some people might try to bump you as you're playing so that you lose quicker and that they can play quicker.
There's all these little...
And then you got to worry about getting pickpocketed or getting knifed maybe. So it was always, it made it pretty damn exciting. You know? So,
it's thrilling, yeah.
So I still, you know, Times Square still I find fascinating that it's 2 in the morning and you see families from all over the world just walking around,
just
taking
hanging out.
photos.
You wouldn't even know it was 2 in the morning.
And it's just, and it's, I don't know, so it's just kind of amazing, you know. So so it's interesting, you know. So I dig it.
Yeah, no, I certainly can see that. So you've done a little bit of everything in your career.
Yeah.
When you decided to do those movies back in the day, how did that first come about? And I mean, you had some pretty good movies in there too.
Yeah.
Zoolander, Meet the Parents, Along Came Polly.
Yeah.
Like, those are fun movies.
How did that come about? Well, some of it was just money, you know.
Money's never a bad thing.
You know, you want to get some money.
Yep.
And then you also, you want to get health insurance.
That's important.
And stand-up comedy doesn't have any of that.
Right.
There's no unions or anything, but if you get in the Screen Actors Guild and do some acting stuff, you can qualify
and you're good to go
for health insurance. So that was always a motivation, and it still is actually. So
yeah,
I'm like,
absolutely.
I'm like, I should get some acting gigs so I can keep my health insurance.
Good call.
Because doing stand-up gigs doesn't provide any health insurance. So yeah, so I need to get some acting gigs, and then it was always I always looked at it as, you know, another way to do comedy, or, you know, I've done dramatic roles too, and then also I would look at it as like, oh, well, this might help me sell more tickets at my shows.
And I think it most certainly did.
So I often viewed the acting stuff as a marketing tool, like hoping it would be a marketing tool for stand-up shows. So I don't think I ever went in going, I want to be an actor. And I don't think I was ever.
Well, you mentioned that you were introverted too, so.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, working with different directors, if you get a director that's that really has their own style, that's always cool, because then you're experiencing something different, and it's an interesting collaboration.
Whose style did you like?
Well, you know, I've been lucky. I've gotten to work with a bunch of different people. One of I think my first non-TV commercial acting, my first professional gigs were acting in commercials, but my first one, not a commercial, was Barry Levinson. He did a show called The Beat.
Okay.
And Mark Ruffalo actually starred on it, but it only lasted like a season or half a season. I did one episode of that, and that was really cool because I was a big Barry Levinson fan. He did the movie Diner, and he filmed in a little bit of a different style because he always filmed, I think, with 2 cameras. So there'd be the one main camera, and then he'd have a second camera, just getting sort of a second angle of coverage that an angle you may not normally use. And so that was cool. And then the husband and wife team who did American Splendor, Robert Pulcini and Sherry Springer Berman, they did that was a great movie, and that was, they did a lot of they did stuff that I didn't even know they were doing. You know, then you watch the movie and you're like, wow, oh, I didn't even know you were filming us there. You know, and it was like a cool angle, and you're like, so it was just really cool. And then I got to work with, I mean, I'm leaving people out, unfortunately, but like Darren Aronofsky in The Wrestler. And that was cool, because that was while I was doing 30 Rock, and there was a writer's strike.
Right.
And so 30 Rock stopped production. The Wrestler started production because they went into filming right before the writer's strike happened. Wow. So they were able to still film.
They were still clear, yeah.
Yeah, and that enabled me to do that. And now 30 Rock, the acting was very, very specific. You had to hit your mark, say your line a certain way, and fast. It was like a fast talking show. You had to say it fast. and then move on. You know, where I remember I was doing a scene with Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler, and we do the scene, and on one of the takes, we accidentally sort of talk over each other. And after the take, I said to the director, and I said, Mickey, I'm like, hey, sorry about that. I think I stepped on your line there. And the director was like, no, it was great. Because real life, you sometimes talk over each other.
Yeah.
Where 30 Rock would be like,
perfectly scripted.
They'd be like,
we got to do it again.
Do that again.
Yeah.
You know. So, and neither one's wrong.
Right.
You know, they're just different styles. So, The Wrestler was almost like you knew the storyline, you knew the words, but it was like being in a documentary, except you knew what was going on.
Right. A little freer
So they
that
wanted
way.
it completely natural, nothing over exaggerated or anything, just completely realistic. Where 30 Rock was more stylized in how it was done. So that's always good to like mix it up. You know, you just pick up different things. You know, and The Wrestler was filmed also very differently than 30 Rock. It was, you know, mostly if they did light a scene, it was just very natural. It wasn't what they call the beauty lighting, or to make you know
stage lighting,
to make the actors and the set all look pretty. Right. You know, which is so The Wrestler may have done things the opposite, just trying to
a little more down and dirty.
Yeah, and just like, all right, what's the natural light here? Let's just do that. And if it looks depressing, that's because
that works.
That's
what we want.
To be, you know. So it was cool. You
Definitely.
know? And you know, like I said, you can always you know, pick up things from different places, and whether it's subconsciously or consciously, you know, use different styles or elements yourself. So. Yeah.
I like people like yourself that kind of cross over and do a little bit of everything, you know? Think about like Ben Stiller, who you worked with in the past, like doing Escape at Dannemora, like that's totally different from what he's done.
And if you look at Stiller, it doesn't surprise me because, and I've worked with him a few times, but I barely know him. But if you look at him, even though he's in comedies so much, he's acting in comedies, he's really serious. So if you watch Meet the Parents, there's like one or two scenes where he's acting like a little goofy with some physical stuff. The rest of it, he's super serious in that movie. But it's that seriousness that makes it so funny, you know. So right now, on tour. I'll be going many different countries this year. I'll be going all over, you know, Europe, Asia, South America. Hopefully Africa. I'm not sure, but that would be great.
Have you been to Africa before?
Long time ago. Haven't done any shows there, but I've been there a long time ago.
What's the craziest country you've done stand-up in?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I did, and it's not a crazy country, but I wasn't sure. I did a guest set, so I'm unannounced, in Romania.
Interesting.
Yeah. And in Bucharest.
How does one guest in Romania?
Well, I was filming a movie called Sharknado 6.
Sharknado
last
6?
Year, right about this time.
Wow, I did not know that was there.
That's the last one, yeah.
Oh my God.
So we filmed it there. Because I was in Sharknado 2, and I love those kind of movies.
Those movies
And I got
great.
Sharknado 2 from Twitter.
From
basically.
Twitter, really?
Yeah, because when Sharknado 1 came on,
you were all about it.
I thought it was so great. And I was like, this is the kind of movies I want to do.
I've been waiting for this
agents
movie.
would never send me on that stuff. So I see this. I'm like, this is so great. So I'm tweeting a lot that night, and the director starts tweeting at me too, and then so I had fun, and then I think about a year or two earlier that the company that made that movie, and the casting director, I think I'd reached out to them. So then it's a year later.
Right.
It's Sharknado 2, which takes place in New York City.
And you're in
here. I see the New York Post, and I see a picture of Ian Ziering on top of a cab, you know, with a chainsaw, getting ready to fight a flying shark. I'm like, I missed it again.
You're like, when's my chance?
Yeah, I missed it again. I'm not getting in this movie. So I reach out to the director and the casting director.
Like, get me in.
And then I'm like, hey, if you got anything left and you're still here, I'm around. I'll do anything in it. And then they got back to me, and they had a part, and I did like 2 or 3 days on the movie, and had so much fun. My character got killed off in it. And then last year, I hadn't heard from the director in quite a while. He calls me up. He's like, yeah, we're doing the last Sharknado.
You got to get in
Sharknado
this.
6. And he go, yeah, we want you to be in it. And I'm like, yeah, my character got killed in it.
How am I coming back?
He goes, well, this one's a time-traveling one, so you can be back in it. I'm
There
like,
you go.
great, let's do it. I'm like, when are you doing it? He goes, 2 weeks. I'm like, where are you filming? He goes, Romania. I'm like, let's go.
Wow.
So when I was in Romania, I just did some, like, researching on the internet, found out they had a comedy club there, run by some local comics. So I met up with them, I did their podcast, and then I did a guest spot on their show, and I didn't know, I was not advertised. The show's all in Romanian.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are there any English speakers here?
It's all in Romanian. And the guys go to me, I go, how do you think this is gonna go here? And he goes, I think it's gonna be good, don't worry about it. And I'm up there, so I'm in the back, just watching a show, 100% in Romanian, and I'm like, I don't know, man, I don't know if they're gonna pick up on this or not. Well, it was great. Yeah, it was great.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Did you have an interpreter?
No, I just did it in English, and I had to slow down, like maybe just a little bit, and I had to sort of feel them out a little bit because I wasn't sure if, some words they might, because there's wordplay in comedy, with but overall it was good.
Wow.
And I did it, I did some stuff a little differently, but it was great. So that one was fun because. Like I've done a lot of countries in Europe, and I'm going to Europe again soon, later this year. But
that's an all-timer right there.
I'm advertised, like they know I'm coming.
You just rolled up here.
Whoever's coming knows what they're getting into, and this was completely unannounced. And I was like, I don't, but yeah, it was cool, man.
That's an amazing.
And I had
story.
a great cheeseburger there. I had one of the best cheeseburgers I've ever had there.
There you go.
Yeah, the wife of one of the comics who co-owns the Comedy Room, she was. I think she's a chef at one of these restaurants around the corner. It's one of the best burgers I've ever had, dude.
Wow, how about that?
So if you want a good cheeseburger,
Romania.
Go to Romania. Great food there in general.
And if you want a good comedy show, go to Caroline's this weekend.
Yep.
Judah Friedlander, it's been an absolute pleasure.
And feel free to vote for me for president. So,
thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
There you have it, everybody. It's been a great one. We'll see you next time here on The Sit Down.
Cool.